My name is Gibson, and I'm the owner and founder of the Personal Development School. This is your daily breakthrough video, and in this video, I'm continuing the series of advice to an anxiously attached individual, or the anxious preoccupied attachment style individual, after a breakup. So I've done previous videos that talked about how each attachment style tends to handle or respond to a breakup, and then how to sort of reconnect with an ex if it's the right and healthy situation and dynamic. But in these videos, I'm giving specific advice about how to deal with a breakup according to the attachment style that you have. Okay, so there will be a little bit of similarity between the key points of how we can all heal from a breakup that everybody has access to. In the first 5 minutes or so of this video, sort of the key points. If you've listened to them in the Fearful Avoidant video already, I still recommend listening to them again, because if you really master those key points, breakups will go way more smoothly. And in the second half of this video, I'm going to go through very specific tools for the anxiously attached individual. Okay, so before I start, super quick, our personal development online school is open. We opened our doors yesterday. We've had an incredible turnout already. It's been an amazing experience. We already have such cool and amazing community members asking really powerful questions in the community group. And we begin our live webinars this weekend for everybody who's a group member. So if you haven't already joined our community, please do. And I hope to see you in there. Okay, so first and foremost, all different attachment styles handle breakups differently. Okay, so we know this based on probably a lot of the other videos and learning that you're doing with me here so far, and from anything that you've read or any other research that you've been doing around attachment theory. So when we handle a breakup, or when we go through a breakup, though, there are very specific key points that we have to understand about a breakup itself. So first and foremost, you need to know that when somebody leaves your life, it's not their body that you're missing. It's not their physical being in their form that you're grieving. It's the traits that they brought into your life, the qualities that they brought out in you, and the needs that they were meeting. Okay? So when we are trying to heal from a breakup, what's actually going on is your subconscious mind has basically attached to a person as the source of the needs, the qualities, and the traits that they brought out in you. And so when this is happening, when you have these people in your life, your subconscious has attached to getting these needs met, to having these qualities expressed, to having these behaviors going on in your life. And this is coming from this stored association to, hey, this person's my source of getting my needs met. Then when the person leaves, you're grieving those things, not necessarily the person as much as you think. Of course, we connect to the person too and the qualities within them, but when we can identify and isolate what all these things are, and then we can come up with strategies to start getting these things met in our own lives, committing to meeting these needs ourselves, and filling those perceived subconscious voids that is actually the reasons that our subconscious mind is really suffering at the emotional level, we make the process of healing from a breakup and transforming a lot more efficient and effective. We don't have to feel so helpless along the way. I've been saying this a lot lately because I think it's a really powerful point. Emotions feel like we are helpless to them when we haven't figured out how to identify and isolate what the problem is. It's like, oh, I'm sad and I went through a breakup and it's really hard. But when we're not specific about why we're suffering over the breakup, what we're missing, what we're needing, what qualities we're not expressing because we were expressing them specifically to that person. Maybe it's your vulnerability or your sense of humor that your partner really got, whatever it might be. When we have not identified and isolated what an emotional challenge is all about, we just get lost in the emotional components of it and the feelings of it, and we feel like emotional problems are not solvable. And so when we can identify and isolate, all of a sudden we make these things solvable problems. And this is a really powerful opportunity. So the first things you need to do when you're working through a breakup is, number one, to sit down and ask yourself what things you're specifically going to miss about your ex. And I want you to do this from the point of what qualities did this person bring out in you, or what traits did they bring into your life. Okay, so for example, they might have brought a sense of humor out in you because maybe they would make you laugh and tease you, or your sense of humor, sort of clicked with one another. And so those would be a great example of qualities that they brought out in you, traits they brought into your life. Maybe they made you feel supported, protected, cared for, seen, these sorts of things. Okay, and then you want to go through what needs were being met. Was love and connection being met? Was novelty being met? There was fun, there was excitement, there was change. What were these needs that were being met? Okay. And if you want, you can go to the Personal Development School website, and there's a free feelings and needs list on there. And that's a cool place to get started if you don't really know what your needs are. And what you're going to do with this is you're going to isolate all these different aspects of what you're missing about the person. Don't just think, oh, I miss the person in general, because then you kind of create this helpless dynamic for yourself where it's like, what do I do about that? I miss the person and I don't really know what that means. Versus when you identify, okay, this is what I was missing about the person more specifically, suddenly you can do something with it. Okay, so sit down, write out 3 columns. What needs did this person meet in your life? What qualities did they bring out in you? And what traits did they bring into your life as well? Okay, and so maybe they brought support into your life. They may not bring support out in you, if that makes sense, but they brought support into your life. Maybe they brought out of you your sense of freedom, or your ability to think outside of the box, or not try to control everything, and that lightness that they brought out of you or out in you. So recognize these things. I've had people come to me who have been, like, let's say divorced for 10 years, and they're like, I miss my ex-husband, or I miss my ex-wife. And it's like, you look through it and you're like, okay, so it's not that, do you want to be back together with them? And the answer is like, no, definitely not. And it's like, well, then you don't really miss them. You don't miss like everything about them enough. It's like something specific. And when you feel this missing or this longing, usually it's just a symptom of a need that's not being met, that your subconscious mind has stored associations around that person meeting that need. And usually what I was having a conversation with somebody, this is actually quite a while ago, but she was saying to me, I miss my ex-husband. And we're like, oh, okay, what do you miss about him? And she said, well, the thing that I go to first that my mind thinks about when I think about the memories with him, and they'd been divorced for like years and years. She's like, oh, it's the fun. It's like the things we used to do that were different, that were traveling. And this woman had just taken on this like really high-powered, intense corporate job. And she was working an incredible amount of hours a week under a lot of stress. And her balance between fun and lightness and seriousness and intensity was imbalanced. And that was her brain's way of being like, oh, you miss this, you miss that person. And really it wasn't the person, it was the fun, it was the lightness, it was the stored associations, those memories that she kept thinking about. And our brain will ruminate about things when it's trying to solve a problem or meet a need. So when we can identify and take out what that need is, suddenly we're empowered to solve the problem. So I hope that makes sense, because this is like a really important point when it comes to understanding why we miss people, why we're even with people in the first place sometimes, and what it takes to really get over and move through a relationship. I also want to validate in here that for the anxiously attached individual, it's really tough. So, I'm going to be cheerful as I share this video because that's how I am when I talk about this stuff. But I'm sorry that you're going through a hard time, because I know for the anxiously attached individual, almost more than anybody else, though this is not always the case and there are definite exceptions to the rule, in the first few days, first couple weeks of a breakup, it's really hard. And so just get as much support as possible. I'm going to give you some really good tips throughout this video, but I'm sorry that you're going through a hard time. And I hope this video provides some extra support here for you. So the next things you want to do is once you've defined those things, you want to create strategies for getting these needs met. Okay. So if it's fun, who's going to meet fun in your life, right? Who's going to meet that excitement and novelty? And pick a friend, do something with yourself, like pick anything, but make sure that you create strategies next to those needs, those qualities, and those traits. Okay, so your subconscious doesn't just see this massive perceived void in your life because the person's gone, but instead it sees an opportunity. And if you can't meet these things right away, because sometimes you don't want to have fun 2 days after a breakup, and that's okay. just make a commitment to yourself. Hey, I know what these needs are. I know what a strategy would be. I may not be ready yet, but I have a way of helping to heal this void a little bit within me. And that withdrawal of that, from that person and these needs and traits and qualities being met. So by even making the commitment, your brain will find a little bit of solace. And the next thing you want to do that's so important is question the stories that you tell yourself. For the anxiously attached individuals specifically, a lot of the stories are going to be ruminating about what I should have done differently, why this shouldn't be ending, why, and all these types of stories about what you could have done differently, what should have happened, mistakes you made. You are hurting yourself so much. Please stop. If something didn't work out, it's not just your job to fix it. It's not going to be you as one individual saving the relationship by changing your behavior. The anxiously attached individual tends to get lost in thinking and feeling like that. And it's so excruciating to yourself. So please notice those thoughts. Notice that you're sitting here. Maybe you're sitting in your office building, okay, and you're at work. And you're trying to work and you're thinking all these thoughts about what you could have done differently. And let's say you have this whole movie playing in your mind and you see yourself going back in time and changing it. And then you realize it's too late. It didn't work. And then you feel the sadness. You've just played out this entire movie in your mind on autopilot. This is going to be happening when you're on autopilot and not fully in your conscious mind. And you're hurting yourself with that movie. And it's a sad movie and you keep watching it over and over again and you keep recreating it over and over again. And so notice that when you do that, you're not fully present. You're basically living on autopilot in your subconscious patterns, and your brain's just going through all these like old patterns and ways of trying to get its needs met and trying to think that things could be different. And that is not helping your journey. So when you notice it, try to come back to yourself again. Notice as well that you're abandoning yourself a little bit, that you're out there in the movie and nobody's here with you doing your work, being with you, being on your journey. You kind of abandon yourself to think about what you should have done differently. And that rumination is its own form of self-abandonment. So I just want you to notice that. Notice as well that like these are usually activating strategies. So thinking about how you could still go back together or second guessing the breakup, things like that. These are still strategies to like try to get close to the person, to try to reconnect to the person again in some form, to get the needs met for connection in your brain. And they may not be right for you. They might be, there are some chances where, or some circumstances or instances where it is, maybe we did make a mistake and we reacted too quickly and we ended a relationship or things like that. But for the vast majority of us, these are not decisions we take lightly. And the end of a relationship is usually something that's coming for a long time before it actually happens. And so before we jump into all the questioning and what should be different, remember why you ended a relationship in the first place. Remember why it wasn't working out and focus on that a little bit. Because the brain for the anxiously attached individual likes to go focus on why it shouldn't have ended. And again, you're just creating your own suffering on autopilot as those subconscious programs are running. It's not your fault, but it is your responsibility to yourself, and out of self-love and compassion to yourself and self-care, to, when you notice that, to pull out of that fantasy or space and come back here and be with yourself and change your thinking so that you don't end up in that pattern again. The reason this is so important, and I won't get into this for too long, but the reason this is so important is because thoughts produce emotional responses. So when you're in that movie in your mind, it's creating an emotional output. So you're either creating like a movie about, hey, I'm moving forward in my life. What can I empower? How can I grow? How can I expand? What can I do? And you're empowering yourself and doing things that are going to help your healing journey, or you're on autopilot and you're doing things that are just creating more of your emotional pain. And then after an hour of doing that on and off throughout the day, you don't feel good at the end of the day. And the healing from the breakup feels harder, and it spills into work and it spills into other areas. And this tends to have like an exponential effect if we don't catch it and stop it from happening frequently. Okay. Now I want you to know too, there's a difference between pain and suffering. Pain is the withdrawal from the unmet needs, the qualities that we were reliant on, or at least appreciative of, and getting that, and the traits that somebody was bringing into our lives and bringing out of us. And so when we are going through that withdrawal from that, that's painful. That hurts. And that's natural feedback that, hey, you have to get on your feet now. You have to go get these things met. Suffering is the story we tell around the pain. It's what we make the pain mean. And it's that space, it's the meaning we give to the pain that becomes excruciating. So if you are out of a breakup and you're making it mean I'm unlovable, nobody's going to care about me, I won't be in a relationship ever again, I'll be alone forever, I'll never find anybody like this. If you're telling yourself these stories, you are creating way more suffering than is necessary. And sometimes our stories are true, but very rarely are they actually true. And we really need to get in there, hone in on what they are, and question them. These are usually coming from core pattern belief wounds in your subconscious mind. Another thing that's really important, so as we go into the anxiously attached individual even more specifically, you want to break the addiction to your partner in your mind. Usually the anxiously attached individual, after the relationship is over, your brain gets its needs met in the present through actual actions, behaviors, doing things. In memories from the past, okay? So thinking about your partner all the times and fantasies of the future. And I noticed that for the anxiously attached individual, they tend to go a lot into the past and think about all the old times and think about all the good memories and fantasize about what could be in the future or what could have been. And it's almost like your brain is still addicted to the partner. It's still the love addict pattern playing out. And you keep fueling that addiction on autopilot by not recognizing that you're still trying to get your needs met from that space. And so, when we stop investing in those stories, our brain stops storing emotional associations in memory, in fantasy. And through that, we can actually break the addiction and start coming back to ourselves again, which is an absolute necessity on the healing journey. So you want to define what a relationship to yourself would really mean. For most anxiously attached individuals, there isn't a relationship to the self that's very much there. Usually it's like a great relationship to many other people, but you're so focused on other people's feelings and needs that you often abandon yourself, as I keep mentioning, very quickly, very easily. So I want you to sit down and define what a relationship to yourself would mean. If you're having a hard time with this, write down what you would like the ideal partner to do for you in a relationship, a romantic relationship. And then write out, and it can even just be the ideal friend, and then write out how you should treat yourself that way, ways you can treat yourself. So for example, if it's I want somebody who I really care about in my life to think about me, be thoughtful about me, or listen to my feelings, meet my needs, hear my needs, okay? Then turn that inward. So go, okay, how can I meet my own needs? How can I be thoughtful about myself? How can I, and get organized from that space? And that is really important to do, okay? So please take the time to actually put that all in there together. It's very, very important and vital. The next set of steps here. So I want you to also notice how you can be aware of your activating strategies. So I want to make sure I explain that last point there for a second. I'm not going to have time to go through and edit this video. I usually do these all in one take, but I noticed I just dazed out and started thinking about an appointment I have in a moment. And so I just want to make sure I finalize that last sentence. So you're seeing me at my best and my worst. This is really important. So when you take these strategies, right? You're like, okay, what would I want an ideal partner, an ideal friend to do for me? How can I start meeting my needs myself? Maybe some examples are the ideal friend would show up and listen to my feelings and needs. The question becomes, how can I listen to my own feelings and needs? And maybe that's journaling. Maybe that's, spending time in meditation, asking yourself what you're feeling today, what you need for today to feel grounded and rooted in a good space. Maybe it's, people being thoughtful about you. Maybe you're thoughtful about yourself. Check in with yourself. What do I need, at work today when I'm going through this experience? How am I feeling when my boss speaks to me like that? How would I want somebody else to stick up for me or show up for me? These sorts of things, okay? So I hope that makes sense. You're literally applying, and then you have to action and execute on these things. They can't just be things you write down and don't do because you're not taking the process all the way through. So it's important to make those self-commitments. Next, be aware of your activating strategies. So you might try to convince yourself that, hey, I should go back because of this, this, and this, or, oh, you know, he or she really wants to be with me. And we might trick ourselves. And, you know, sometimes these things can be true, but just before you buy in or invest in sending that quick text message or trying to reignite the relationship, ask yourself at a conscious level, just pause, because it's your subconscious really doing these things. If you're just reacting and doing them like on emotion, ask yourself consciously, hold on, is this actually truly the right thing for me at this point in my life? And did we break up for a reason? And is it the right thing to reinitiate contact? And if your answer from a conscious level is yes, great. But sit for a second and really consider when you might be sort of tricking your subconscious. Sometimes will trick your conscious mind into going back to something that it may not actually need to go back to, or it may not be the right thing at this time. Okay, so another few really quick things. Don't self-criticize. Be gentle to yourself, please. And please take time to not jump into another relationship again if you can. Talk to friends and family, but don't talk to them as the substitute for showing up for yourself. Don't just go to friends and family all the time and try to never be alone. Try to cultivate a relationship with yourself. It's going to be uncomfortable at first. It's not going to feel like so much fun, but it's going to get really beautiful as you start to treat yourself in a relationship to yourself as you would another human being, okay? Because usually the anxiously attached individuals are like the most lovely, caring, amazing people to others, but not necessarily treating and showing up and caring and respecting themselves to that same degree, okay? So don't say too much about your ex. Don't bad talk anybody, because you're just going to feel some subconscious guilt around that later. Just say it didn't work out for a reason. This didn't feel good. I'm right to move on. Like, set your boundaries and how you communicate, but don't say, oh, this person was so terrible, all that stuff, because you're just kind of like making negative stories to bring into your next relationship. Because on repetition plus emotion, your thoughts that elicit emotional responses repeatedly create new programs, and you don't want to leave one relationship and go into the next one having, you know, made those wounds extra big, okay? Reflect on what happened. Take away what you can from it. See what you can improve on, grow from, learn from. You know, what are the lessons that came out of this relationship? How did you show up? How do you want to show up differently going forward? How do you do that? How do you actually create that and execute on it? What do you want in a relationship? What do you want your non-negotiables to be? And make sure that you're not attaching to negative stories about yourself. Okay, that's maybe one of the most important things. Lastly, take some boundary action out of this. What should your boundaries have been? What will they be now? What will they be in future relationships, friendships? Look everywhere. Take self-inventory. The best time to really do a deep dive and introspect with yourself is after a relationship ends, because we get to re-find ourselves and we get to sort of reinvent and recreate ourselves from a space of empowerment. Hey, what wasn't working? How can I work that through? How can I improve on that so I don't hurt myself again in future situations if that was, you know, something that I was doing. And lastly, try to really feel your emotions. It's good to feel, it's good to process, and it's good to work them through, okay? So thank you so much for watching this. I hope this was helpful. I know I gave you a ton of information, but feel free to pause it, slow the video down, go through it a couple times, take secondary notes, do all that stuff. And again, I would love to see you in the Personal Development School community. And thanks for being a part of this journey.